Okay, I have started recording. So I can just start a little bit with some of my story. So I'm Alicia Clark. When I was 15, I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. I worried a lot, would be a simple way maybe to put it. I worried about everything, including my safety. I worried a lot about my own safety. To the point where it disrupted my life, to the point where my mom took me to a therapist and I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. So a lot of what I struggle with is like thoughts, repetitive thoughts, worrying about things, a lot of things I can't control. And I worry what people think about me. And I dealt with that a lot in my early years and into high school. And I also started drinking alcohol to help with the anxiety. And, it did help. It helped so much that I continued to drink. I continued to drink to the point where I got several underage drinking tickets and had to go to some treatment places. And then got sober 2.5 years ago, where I was able to really think about my own recovery as it relates to not only mental health, which was what I was really focused on, but also substance use. So I'm really grateful that I had that opportunity to be a person who can talk about my substance use as well, and not have it be based in shame, because I was certified as a certified peer specialist actually back in 2013. So I was actively drinking during my certification, which produced a lot of shame for me. But by going through that process, it really helped me to learn more about my alcoholism and some things that were not aligning with like who I really wanted to be and what like energy I was putting out into the universe. So yeah, I got certified in 2013, and honestly, I was at a job I have a associate's degree in human services. I was at my job for my internship, and someone said, "Have you ever heard of peer support?" And I was like, "No, I don't know what that is. Tell me more." And they told me what it was, and I didn't know if it was for me. I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know any other peer specialists, but I decided to take the training anyway. And I drove like 4 hours to get to the training every day and back while I was in school, and got certified. And I've been certified since. And I am so grateful I got certified, because it put my career in a very different trajectory than where it was going, which was in the human services field. I didn't really know what I was going to do, but I was very passionate about mental health and stigma around mental health. So yeah, I really started loving peer support. But I struggled when I first got into peer support, in the sense of like, it's very part-time work. I wanted full-time. I wanted a career. So I was really happy when I came to Chrysalis, and I was able to, I came to Chrysalis as a certified peer specialist full-time, and I went to a lead and then a supervisor and now the assistant director. So I'm really, really amazed that Chrysalis has offered those opportunities to peer specialists, and I hope we continue to do more of that. So I am going to shift gears a little bit and pass it to our next peer specialist. Jenny, do you want to go next?
Oh, hi, I'm Jenny. Thanks for calling on me, Alicia, and thanks for sharing. So I feel more brave now. So I got to peer specialist through being in recovery. I went through the Dane County system for services. So I was on, well, let's see, how did I get into services? Well, I drank my way into services. So I found out like later in life for me in my 30s, I always had depression. My whole life, I've had that diagnosis. Well, not my whole life, but my adult life, and fine, managed it. Anxiety, fine, managed it. But my drinking, I couldn't manage. So I went through like outpatient services that were available to me through Badger Care. I'm very grateful to the state of Wisconsin because they funded my mental health recovery. And I couldn't have gotten sober or the mental health services that I needed without the support of Badger Care, Medicaid, Medicare, FSET, Job Center. I'm forgetting hundreds. The river. I mean, anything we didn't have CCS at the time, so this was pre-CCS. So things that were available to me, I was a consumer of, and I loved going to outpatient services. I went 4 times a week. I took any women's group I could. I took any Seeking Safety group, which is like a trauma and addiction workbook. I took that 2 times. That was so beneficial in my healing. For me, I didn't realize that underneath my, I don't know, things was some trauma that was unresolved, and a lot of poor choices that I made, right, that got me in a place where I needed help. So I got that help, and while I was getting that help, I was in an outpatient women's group, and the facilitator showed a documentary to us in the group called Healing Mean. It's the Tonier Kane story. It's free on the internet if anyone ever wanted to learn more about her, but she is an advocate for peer support. That was when I saw her documentary. That was the first time I ever heard about peer support, and that was in 2012. I think I was experiencing a little bit of peer support, but didn't know it through the services I was receiving, because we did group therapy or group workbooks or group counseling. So the other people who were in treatment with me, we were giving each other support. And the facilitator we worked with knew a lot about peer support and advocated for it. It was something that Toni Arcane said in her documentary. She said, "I am not what happened to me, I'm what I choose to become." And that really spoke to me, because I felt really trapped by maybe some bad choices that I had made, right? So I learned about peer support. I was looking into it, and it was like, let's see, I got sober in 2013, and I found out there was a training in Chicago through the DBSA, and I was gifted a scholarship to go to that training. And I went to Chicago for a week and did the certified peer support training and exam. I became certified in 2014 in January, and then I kind of sat on that certificate. There wasn't really much happening in Dane County at that time for peer support jobs, but there was still more work I needed to do on myself. So I just kept in recovery, going to services and working and doing recovery. And I learned that there was going to be it was called a wellness, what was it called? I forgot. I don't know, a wellness coach. That's what it was, a wellness coach that was needed to be a certified peer support specialist. That was me. So I applied. That was the first, they hired me. And that was my first peer support job, and that was 2016. And that was great. That was my first full-time job ever. So, I really had a lot to learn of how to be able to work all day. And that job, I worked off disability with that job, which was a huge step into the unknown. Would I be able to work full time? What if I can't? What if I get sick again? Lots of questions, but I took a leap of faith, because I really wanted to work in peer support, because I thought it was the one thing that I knew something about, because I had utilized so many services in Dane County, and I navigated those independently with counselors, with FSET, like helpers, right? So I wanted to be a helper. And so I worked at that wellness coach position. That was a grant. I I was there just about 3 years, and then I had a short stint as a barista. I hope you didn't come by and get any drinks from me. It wasn't like my finest job I've ever done, but I did that. And then there was an opening at Chrysalis. I started there. I am still currently an employment specialist with the IPS team. And then this summer, I got the privilege to use my vocational peer specialist certification and start doing peer support services too, which has been wonderful. It is different than IPS. Yeah, I'm really happy that I can, I guess I have the best of both worlds in a way. So I'm really happy to explore that more. I love that, when I'm with the peers, I'm a peer amongst peers, and that feels really good to me. I'm just checking my notes to see if I wrote down anything else that was super important. I guess I would just say that I'm still in recovery, and I have 7 years alcohol-free, 7.5 years, and that's a huge priority in my life to keep working that path and, focusing on my family. And I'm also just really grateful to be part of Chrysalis. So thanks for letting me share today, and I'll pass.
Thank you, Jenny. Andrew, are you up for going next?
Yeah, sure. So my recovery has been like full of ups and downs and such. I didn't have a diagnosis of depression until I became an adult. My childhood was a little rough because I lived in a toxic home, was abusive, really stunted my emotional growth, which led to other problems making friends and stuff. Accumulated in when I was 18, attempting to take my own life. Got the diagnosis of depression, got put on a medication that ended up not being so helpful. But I was fortunate that I was able to find a lot of connection at college, have a circle of friends and everything. And a lot of the symptoms subsided. After I graduated, and especially after not finding work and finding out that my career of choice was not working out for me, which at the time was a teacher, a high school teacher teaching English lit, really was a huge stumbling block. And my, depression symptoms came in full force, started isolating, really had some problems feeling connected with others, was long-term unemployed, found an opportunity to go back to school to get a master's degree in library and information science. That was going well for a while. My life started to pick up again. And then a whole bunch of things started to kind of happen in a row. Lost a job, lost a girlfriend, and then like classes became online only. And so my unsupported self was unable to handle that. So went into another deep depression. I got an opportunity to move with my parents to Wisconsin, and since California at the time was not working out for me, decided to take that gamble. It was a little bit after that things started to turn around for me when I agreed to try medications again. And that kind of gave me the willpower to try therapy again. And I got very fortunate that I got an amazing therapist who recommended that I do volunteering. And then I got lucky again, and I got an amazing volunteering position that really built up my self-esteem, my confidence, gave me a sense of connection again. And I really started to build myself up. It led to a part-time employment that, again, helped me to build up self-esteem and confidence. And then year after that, through all those supports, got full-time employment as an independent living specialist. That job was very helpful for me, and I think I was only able to maintain it through maintaining positive self-care, maintaining my symptoms, which were ever present. I was very fortunate to work with a lot of individuals who had experience being a peer specialist, and so I learned about it from the program. Had a very supportive boss who agreed to not only give me time off for the CPS training, but also pay me for that time, which I'm very grateful for. I know I'm kind of spoiled in that because there's a lot of people who don't get that opportunity. was, again, very lucky to have very talented and amazingly bright and intelligent teachers for the peer support. So enjoyed that process. That was the same year that Jenny was in that course. So I met Jenny through that time. So we became peer supports at the same time. And it was stayed as an ILC at the ILC for a little bit longer as an independent living specialist. But when an opportunity came around in 2018 to full-time position working as a peer support at Chrysalis, I took the opportunity and got the job. And it's been wonderful ever since. The road to recovery has been bumpy, and it's taken a lot of self-care and mindfulness to maintain, but I think it's ultimately been productive and fruitful. And I'm very lucky that I'm able to share my experiences with others. And with that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Andrew. And Matthew, if you could talk a little bit.
Oh man, thanks so much. I just want to welcome everybody to the space. I feel so blessed to be here. And Alicia, Jenny, and Andrew, thanks so much for your shares. So like Jenny said, I feel more at ease now after some other shares. I wrote notes because a lot of times I just go off the top of my head, and I wrote some notes, so forgive me if I look down at the page. So I just wanted to express the gratitude I feel. I'm just so appreciative of this space and time. It's powerful to have partners, supervisors, directors, colleagues, and ultimately peers, right? In creating a more balanced and peaceful world for us all. So I've been hospitalized 4 times. Once while having a particularly hard time. This is my second time. Once having a particularly hard time. It was when I was coming back from Rome, Italy. It was the year that my daughter was born. I was actually apprehended and tased by police here in Madison. And I had a short stint at Mendota Mental Health Institute. And so I'm really now aware that my presence here is not to be taken lightly. As many of our Black brothers and sisters, who have experienced mental health imbalances, challenges, they've had their lives taken away, from them, even in this city, right? And all they needed was help too, right? So I feel very privileged to be able to have gotten help. Yeah, I've been privileged with support, and I want to support others. I mean, that's just where it boils down to that. One supporter that was particularly helpful for me, I remember, was when I was in the hospital in Indiana, where my grandfather stayed, and that's where I was staying at the time. When a psychiatrist in Indiana just held hope for me, right? Like he saw it. Like when I'd go into his office, at the hospital, when I was going, he would have bright lights in there, and I was like, I just want to connect to my daughter. I'm like, oh my God. And he's like, you can do it. And this was 2007, advent of iPhone, right? So it's before all of the awesome opportunities that we have now, but he could see it for me, right? But he held that hope. What else did I want to say? Try to keep this brief. And other support has really come in from the Madison community. I have an employer here at Chrysalis, and celebrating 10 years along with Danny this year. So it's amazing. And it's a whole Chrysalis community. It's beautiful. So I was also hospitalized while I was already working at Chrysalis. This is 2013 going into 2014. And I just want to say, the ability to have PTO at that time and to be able to then come back on a part-time level. And, since then I haven't been hospitalized again. And so I just appreciate that Chrysalis has it in its ethos that this is a journey we're all walking together, and there is no shame in this. We're really looking to raise our level of connectedness so no one feels isolated, no one feels alone, where illness can breed, right? We all really have that wellness mentality that we together, collective. So I've been a meditator for about 7 years now, stemming from that last time of hospitalization. And I'm also walking a yoga path, the 8 limbs path of yoga. And it's just like a inquiry. It's like an avenue. It's like in a way to get in touch with your mind, body, and spirit, and ultimately everything else. So yeah, I'm passionate about whole health, and I'm in awe of healing and the power of awareness and presence and ultimately peace. So peace, thanks so much. I'll let it go with that. I look forward to any Q&A later.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Eric, would you be open to going next?
I sometimes have problems with my computer because I'm left-handed and the mouse is on the right, so it's like I have to really concentrate on what I'm doing here. Well, my mental health issues go back to really early childhood. When I guessing about 3 years old, I was sexually assaulted. I was in an isolated place, and it was very intense and extremely traumatic. And but no adults, I'm sure, were aware of it happening or found out about it. But that and some other traumatic things that happened, some emotional and physical abuse, it kind of all combined. And I also think there's a history of mental illness in my family, actually both sides of my family. So I think these experiences plus my predisposition genetically, they just kind of came together and just created a lot of trouble for me. In my childhood, I had a lot of behavioral issues. For example, I had night terrors. I was a sleepwalker. I had these extreme nightmares that I couldn't seem to wake up from, and that would lead to a type of seizure that I would have. A lot of this was isolated because it would happen late at night. I also had insomnia. And I'd leave the house and I'd go out and wake up in the woods and all these scary places. So my parents were aware of something, there was something different, and there was talk of taking me to a child psychologist, but the nearest one would have been in central Wisconsin, and my parents didn't think they were very good at that time. They maybe weren't, and so they feared that, I might be institutionalized. So I'm really glad they didn't actually, take me anywhere for help. But I just remember I was, so I channeled a lot of my energy into scholastics. I had learned how to read when I was also about 2 or 3. My parents were in this program that in which you expose your children to learning before school. So by kindergarten, I was reading, like adult books, science fiction books primarily. So I was very advanced academically. I was also into creative pursuits, and I won a lot of awards for this, even at the state and national level. But I didn't feel successful. I felt very, I just felt kind of worthless, and I was also really afraid that people were going to find out about these secrets I had. And living in a small town, and picking up on attitudes about things like sexual orientation, I was really afraid for my life. I thought I was going to be found out and actually killed. So I went to college, and I met someone. I had a girlfriend for a while. We were having relationship problems, and I went to student counseling. Unfortunately, I didn't really get help there. I was put on some psych meds. I believe I was misdiagnosed. I eventually ended up in a psych research experiment that was held at the UW, and I almost died from it. I didn't eat. I lost weight. I was basically anorexic. I weighed about 100 pounds, and I'm over 6 feet. My parents finally found me. I had lost connection with them, and they found me in Madison, and were really alarmed, and sent me to a private psychiatrist who did help me. And then I spent years of very bumpy recovery. I do well for a while, and then relapses. I had substance abuse problems with alcohol, all sorts of relationship issues. I became homeless at times. I was very much a street person for periods of my life, and but I also, there was a part of me that did pursue getting help, and in spite of what happened with UW counseling, I eventually went to mental health of Dane County and had sort of okay experiences there. I also, when I was living at the YMCA, a social worker there that I connected with shared this new organization that was forming through, I believe, Goodwill, and which eventually became Chrysalis. And so the following years, and we're talking about, really decades, there was moments of improvement and then setbacks. And when I was doing better or maybe wanting to do better, I would reach out to Chrysalis and they would help me find jobs. And eventually I just got better and I found a therapist at Mental Health of Dane County who I really connected with, and I was able to share all these experiences, and she helped me process, the trauma and the rape and all these other things that happened to me, and helped me start to feel a little bit better about myself. And meanwhile, I did better with my work situations, and eventually Chrysalis offered me a job as a part-time staff person. And so I worked in the work center for a number of years. Then the director, Julia Carbon, suggested I get peer specialist training, which I embarked on, where I met my coworker, Matthew, was also at that training. And I think that was about 8 years ago. And everything has just been, gradually getting better. As far as, as just feeling, like good about myself and work and life in general. And I wrote down a couple of notes here. At the end here, I was talking, I found that what work provided for me, the important aspects of work that I learned from, work as recovery, was that, it gave you a sense of, gave you meaningful activity and increased your self-worth, but also it fostered connections and a sense of belonging with the community and the community of your peers and allies. And also, for me, peer involvement is about being who you are, finding mutuality with your peers, listening and being patient, sharing your life experiences, but also sharing hope, and just keeping kind of things on a destigmatizing. That's a big part of it, and having no more secrets, no secrets.
Thank you so much, Eric. It was really amazing to hear. Jean.
Yeah. Hi there. I also was raised in a very traumatic home environment. I am the youngest out of 4 girls, and all of us experienced physical and emotional abuse for many years. I was not able to complete high school because I just wanted to get away from it. I just wasn't even able to concentrate in school because I had very serious depression and anxiety. And this was back in the 70s. And I think they might have just been coming around with more awareness and education about how to treat depression. So when I quit high school and immediately worked full time, and my mom insisted that I got a GED, which I did do. But I remember my coping skills weren't very well. I drank pretty heavily. I smoked pretty heavily. I experienced homelessness and being evicted from at least one apartment. It was a very, very bad time in my life. And my sister reminds me of that. And I have to sometimes tell her, okay, you don't need to remind me of that time in my life. So this went on for many years. I did eventually move to Madison, and I found some peace here. I found that in small towns were a little bit too oppressive for me. My sister suffers from mental illness as well. And so I did get into some like stability here, but I still just wasn't able to work full time. There was just so much anxiety attacks and panic attacks, and I was very underweight. So in 1998, my then significant partner of many years had a massive heart attack and almost died. So this created an immense change in me, because when I looked at, he was 12 years older than me. When I looked at him, I thought that could be me 12 years from now. I could be the one dead, and I have really got to make changes here. And I did. It was not easy, but it took me a couple times to quit smoking, and that is a very addicting drug. It's horrible. And it's been 23 years since I quit smoking. That's really big for me. And there's not a day that goes by that I am not so glad that I quit, because I see so many people that are in my age that can barely breathe or has a diagnosis of COPD. And I did find that quitting drinking at the same time helped me quit smoking, because I wasn't in bar environments. So I just kind of quit everything. And I found out that I was still left with this anxiety, and I did not know what to do with it, because I didn't have the masks anymore. I didn't have the cigarettes. I didn't have the alcohol. I went to a class in overcoming depression and anxiety, and it helped me immensely. Like new thinking strategies, coping strategies, all that. When I was growing up, your biggest thing was just to survive and avoid getting into fights and things like that. So I found this class was really helpful. And then I did eventually find a 12-step program and yoga and exercise and all those things. So it was just a very moving time in my life. I did eventually find housing, which offered me an opportunity to go to school, which I got a human service associate's degree while I was working weekends retail. And I found out about being a peer specialist. I'm like, what is that? What's a peer specialist? And it seemed to like totally line up with my values about wellness and compassion and meeting people where they're at and not judging. So, because I think my experience with getting help is that often I felt judged, or somebody would tell me, don't do this because you can't do it. You're not stable enough. You can't do that. You can't get through school. You can't do this. But I'm like, well, what have I got to lose? What have I got to lose? Nothing. So I came on board at Chrysalis in 2016, and it was a challenge for me, but I got through it. And I'm so glad to be on board. It'll be 5 years at the end of April. So that's big time, working full time in my chosen profession. I like to be there for people who are going through their challenges and who needs somebody to listen and not judge or tell them they should do this or they shouldn't do that. And just being well and working on wellness is a full-time job. It never ends. It's just one day to the next. And there are still hard days, but I get through them. I just go to one of my meetings and stay grounded. So that'll pass. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jean. Mm-hmm. And we're going to end it with Kurt.
Hello, my name's Kurt, certified peer specialist. My journey spans over 25 years. Just like a lot of other people here today, my childhood was, I endured sexual, physical, and mental abuse growing up, and just didn't know how to deal with it. Didn't have anyone to talk to about it. So it just kind of shoved it down. When I was about 21, I had a surgery, and I was introduced to painkillers for the first time. Didn't know anything about them, and I was hooked. It numbed me from the head down, from everything, and I didn't have to worry and think about the emotions and the feelings and the pain that I endured. That lasted for about 10 years. I was addicted to Percocet, Vicodin, and fentanyl. I was stealing. I was going from different doctors. I was part of that wave where it was really easy to get these drugs. And in 2009, I was getting married to my wife, and it was about 2 weeks after our wedding is where I hit my rock bottom. I was so desperate. I didn't know where to turn to. And I made the very horrible decision to rob 2 pharmacies for painkillers. And I was arrested, and I was sentenced to 20 years, 5 years in prison, 15 years extended supervision. That was actually a blessing in disguise. I was incarcerated, and a judge gave me the earned release program, which, if you're not familiar with that, in Wisconsin, it's a very intensive AODA treatment program in the prison. To complete, once you complete that, it's a 6-month, I think it's a 6-month program. When you complete it, you can get released early from prison. And I took full advantage of it. And the facilitator that I had there was truly incredible. She opened my eyes to so many different things. That's where I learned about forgiveness, how to forgive myself for the things I have done, and truly forgive those who would hurt me in my childhood, and just move past that pain and work through all that stuff. And the positive thinking, like that's where I changed my life. So in a way, I'm very grateful that it happened that way, because any other way, I don't know where I'd be today. So I really, really did the work internally to work on myself. Moving forward, after I was released, I started doing just some different things to give back to the community. And I hooked up with a friend of mine down in Janesville, and we started working on what I call the Recovery Arts and Wellness Program. It's a place at the 12 and 12 Drop Center in Janesville where people can come together on a Saturday and do arts and crafts together. Whether you're in substance use recovery or mental health, it didn't matter. You just come together and just talk and be with like-minded people. And because of that, I got connected with a nonprofit who was actually starting to do peer support in Rock County. They offered me a chance to take the peer support training. I had no idea what that was. I was actually at a coffee shop doing a meet and greet, kind of sharing my story. And I was sitting with Mike Kelly, who is a recovery coach and peer support trainer throughout Wisconsin. And I was listening to this guy talk about the work, and it just kind of worked its way into my brain. And I was interested. And so when I was offered this opportunity, I jumped on it, and I did not look back. So that was in 2018. At this time, I was creating my own nonprofit, and I was just really starting to get really positive about life. I was looking forward to just making people smile and leave a good impact on this world from all the pain I had caused. So, my life has been, since then, it's just been dedicated to helping others and just do good in the community and show people what a person with substance use disorder and a felony conviction, like, break that stigma, break that stereotype. We're not bad people. What have I done since then? Like, look at my track record since then. After I got the peer support training, I was offered a position with Safe Communities, who they strictly work with people with substance use disorder. And so I've been doing that for about a year and a half now. And for some reason, I kept looking at different jobs on different job websites to see what's out there for peer support specialists. And I have to thank Jess for making her transition to Florida, because you opened up an opportunity for me to do the work that I love doing. So I just want to thank you and acknowledge you. I love that you're here today. and just joining Chrysalis has changed my life in so many great ways. I get to do the work that I love, and today I can say that I'm living that life that I had always dreamt of as a child and as a teenager. You know, I always dreamt of there's got to be something better out there. There's got to be something better. And I always had this thing in the back of my head. I've always told myself, Kurt, someday you're going to do something great. And I think that just being on the path that I'm on is that something great. Like, I'm looking forward to the future. I have not taken my foot off the gas pedal. And I'm just happy to be here today. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Kurt. Just a virtual round of applause for all of our vulnerable, possibly beautiful people who shared. I'm just really honored to be in the space with all of you. And yeah, thank you all so much for sharing parts of your story. As you probably heard, we're just all very passionate about peer support, and that judge, you know, we don't want to judge people. We want to provide hope. That's really what peer support is about. So I just want to open it up. If anyone has questions to ask certified peer specialists, if you have any questions about, like, you know, what is a day in the life, or maybe what the employment's like, or anything like that, we are here to answer your questions. You are welcome to chat me, or drop it in the chat, or unmute. You can unmute as well and ask. Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
Thank you. Kurt, specifically, this is for you. What kind of barriers did being formerly incarcerated play in your choice and your eventual hiring as either a peer support specialist or whatever kind of jobs that you were part of?
Sure, good question. So after I was released, I had to put that on my resume, or not my resume, but job applications. Yes, I've been convicted of a felony. How do I explain what happened? My first job out of prison was the worst experience of my life. It was the only person that would hire me at the time, and I endured a lot of mental abuse from the employer. It was so difficult. A year and a half, I had to stay at this job, but I had to stay at this job because I couldn't find anything better, and I wasn't about to quit because I couldn't let my wife down. What I didn't say in my story is my wife was my peer support before I knew what peer support was. She was the one I turned to when I struggled, when I had someone to lean on. She helped, she helped me through a lot of my problems. But I couldn't let her down, so I had to continue working until I could find something better. But after I found that after I write in the application, yes, I have a felony conviction. What I would write is, "We'll discuss upon interview." My track record in working kind of speaks for itself. I have a good track record of working. I didn't quit a lot of jobs. I haven't been fired from any jobs. So that really helped me kind of get over that barrier. Unfortunately, a lot of people struggle with that. So for me, it wasn't that difficult, especially in the peer support world. I've been hired by both organizations with no problems whatsoever. But I know for a lot of people, it's a really big challenge.
Thank you.
I have a question. So in spring of 2016, Chrysalis launched its social enterprise, Chrysalis Pops, or formerly known as PopWorks. I'm just wondering if anyone has experience with that part-time work, and if they could compare it to what the work of a peer support specialist would be, as I know that would be going from something very part-time to something full-time?
Great question, Michael. Thank you so much for posing that. Would any peer specialists like to take that question?
Was the question, Michael, a little bit about like starting out in a part-time role and then transitioning into a full-time role?
Yeah, I guess. Sorry, I didn't clarify that.
No.
Yeah, I think that's what I was asking.
Well, I can definitely speak to that. Yeah, so I was definitely hired at Chrysalis. As Eric alluded to earlier, we had what was called the Work Center. And that was a part-time position I was hired in at. It was called the Work Center Assistant. The Work Center was a volunteer site. People came to Chrysalis and donated their time, gave of their time to the real community. But yeah, I was part-time. And I was part-time at Chrysalis through, gosh, yeah, I think Alicia had already joined. I think Alicia was the first full-time peer specialist at Chrysalis. And then I moved into full-time like 2015, fall of 2015. So if that kind of speaks a little bit to, and then how to do that, taking care of your wellness and such. Is that a part of the question? Yeah, man, it's an awesome part of it, because I think that's like Penny alluded to it too, right? Like, it's like, how much can I do before I feel like, oh, I'm pushed here, right? And so I will just say, that's exactly why I do yoga. That's exactly why I do meditation. You don't do it to like feel enlightened while you're sitting on the cushion, right? You do it so that you can bring it out into your life in challenging situations, and you can breathe, you can find ways, and there's always support. Like I receive support in the Madison community. I right now, have a working relationship with my primary care, but she prescribes me my psych med. And then I have a wonderful talk therapist, so I definitely receive services still. And I think that those are things that you can do. I don't know if that kind of speaks to a little bit of your question.
Thank you.
I have a brief response to that, which is just like, for me, going from long-term unemployed to working full-time was gradual steps. So volunteering started at like 4 hours a week, and then gradually built up to like 20. And then I did, working part-time, and then added more volunteer hours to that. So where I was like, oh, it's kind of like working between the volunteer and the paid work. It was closer to 30, 32, even closer to 40 hours. And so by the time I actually was hired for a full-time position, I felt like I had slowly stepped up into that to build up some of the work tolerance and whatnot. So it wasn't such a gigantic leap. And there's a lot of benefits to volunteering in that, like, you can kind of dictate your hours and do things the way flexible enough to fit your needs. And so I would say that my experience is taking things at your own pace and gradually can be really beneficial.
Thank you.
Great question, Michael. That was an awesome question. Any other questions? You could either unmute or throw them in the chat.
Am I allowed to ask a question?
Sure, go ahead, Andrew.
I'm going to give a hard one though, but I'll answer it first too. So, what's the hardest thing about being a peer support? And for me, it's a lot of empathy fatigue. So there's sometimes where people are going through really hard situations, they're making maybe risky decisions and whatnot, and maybe you're actually being, kind of under fire of somebody's dealing with some hard symptoms, and you get yelled at or get some of the negative attention that you don't really deserve. And being so open and vulnerable can make you feel a little fatigued and whatnot. I definitely want to say that's the hardest part for me. I think like there's no avoiding it. It's part of the job. But definitely self-care has made that possible, taking time aside for myself, not like trying to force myself through that, and having an employer that understands that that's a challenge has been really helpful.
I'll answer next if you don't mind. For me, the most difficult part is not getting too emotionally invested in a person's journey, especially when they're going through so many struggles. I've worked with too many people who just can't seem to get recovery to work for them, and I've gone down that rabbit hole with them, and I have to remember to pull myself back, be there emotionally for them, but also recognize if I'm getting too emotionally invested in this one person, because I have to be there for everybody else I work with too. So finding that balance and knowing how to, I hate to say this word, but how to shut it off, just for my own sanity, you know, and so I can be there for the other people I work with. For me, sometimes that really is a challenge.
Thanks, Kurt, for sharing. We have two more questions in the chat, actually. So if one person could take, what's a typical day like for a vocational peer specialist at Chrysalis? And Jean or Jenny or Eric, if you want to share, you're absolutely welcome, since you haven't answered any questions yet.
I wouldn't say that I have a typical day. I mean, everything is different from one day to the next. I mean, like yesterday, I was just so incredibly busy, and today's a much slower day. So I might have it in my mind, like, okay, it's going to be like this today. It's going to be this much time, and this, you know, this person, I'm going to be this person for 2 hours, and sometimes it may be totally different. That person may have better made plans, or doesn't want to meet for very long, or make it a phone call somebody I wasn't expecting, or it just depends, you know, which is good because one, you know, never gets monotonous. It's just always different from day to day. So.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jean. A lot of, Kurt says playing Tetris with your schedule. Yeah, a lot of what we do is out in the community. So we're supporting people, you know, at their apartment, at their house, at a coffee shop, at sometimes at Chrysalis, maybe at a job. So a lot of our work is in the community. And then we have documentation and meetings like this. This was actually a staff meeting that we opened up to the public. So yeah, thank you for sharing, Jean. And we had one last question that I'll end with, which is, can someone volunteer at Chrysalis? And that's a great question. Thank you for sending it in. We have had volunteers. I would say, like, we might be able to talk about what we can do at Chrysalis, but we definitely, as a peer specialist, support people to find volunteer jobs. That's definitely part of our role. The IPS employment specialists, that's something they don't focus on, so the vocational peer specialists can. So any other last thoughts or comments before we wrap up? Feel free, I'm gonna put my email in the chat. If anyone has any follow-up questions or comments or wants to talk about volunteering, please feel free to email me. And I just, again, want to thank all the vocational peer specialists for sharing their vulnerability, their stories with not only this community that's here right now, but the Facebook community. You all and everyone in this room is reducing stigma around mental health and substance use challenges by what we're talking about today. We're extremely passionate about peer support at Chrysalis and really believe that people with lived experience need to be a part of mental health and substance use services throughout all of it. So you'll be continuing to see and hear activities that Chrysalis is doing. So yeah, thank you so much. And I'm sure we'll see you soon.